Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
What's up, PGF Nation? We are back. Will the Chiefs miss the playoffs? We saw one of the biggest comebacks ever in college football. Two teams in the SEC had statement wins. Josh Allen went crazy versus the Bucs, a fist fight in the NFC West, and a lot more to get to. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
You know, Brad, quickly, we're not going to talk about this game, but you mentioned fist fight. If what we saw on video and what Jalen Ramsey said is true, Ja'Marr Chase needs to be suspended.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was absolutely crazy. And, that situation is going to be really interesting to unpack because you've got Ja'Marr Chase spitting on Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey clearly was out of line. The whole thing is crazy, right? I don't really know what to make of it. I think there's a lot to unpack there. And the NFL, they've got a million cameras, so they're going to be able to kind of dissect this thing and figure out what these suspensions are going to entail. But I definitely expect probably both of these guys to get in some level of trouble here.
Yeah, something happened because when you watch the video, the coach that was coming onto the field, I don't know if he was wanting to give him water or whatever was going on, he actually attacked Chase first before Jalen Ramsey grabbed him. The coach coming onto the field saw something as well that forced him to put hands on Ja'Marr Chase as well. So something happened.
It's hard to say for sure, right? I mean, obviously, they've got video of him spitting on him. We know that there was some stuff said. So it's a mess. Let's jump into probably the biggest matchup. The game that I think everybody was circling here was Broncos-Chiefs, this AFC West battle, because the Broncos have now really started to separate in this division race right now. This was a huge, huge game for both teams, but I think especially for Kansas City because they really needed this one to kind of stay in the mix here. And now it's going to be an uphill climb for these guys. The Broncos have now won 3 of their last 4 games versus Kansas City. And I don't want to say it was a shocking win. We know the Broncos are a good team, but it was a big win, Alex, for Denver.
Yeah, big win for Denver. Another critical, similar to the Jacksonville game, another critical red zone turnover for Patrick Mahomes when they were driving. I believe the score was tied at this point, and he threw a terrible interception that ended up getting returned. I think there was a penalty on it, so it didn't go for the whole 60-yard return. But another terrible red zone turnover for Patrick Mahomes, who's been showing this season. It's very un-Patrick Mahomes-like. But I'm going to say this really quick about Kansas City. Number one, since Mahomes is into the league, he's been in the AFC Championship game, the Super Bowl. So until he's not, that's the expectation that I have. I'll say that much, and I think they deserve that much respect. The other thing I'm going to say, and I've been saying it to our resident Kansas City Chief fan, Quick, as well as on this podcast, Brett Veach needs to be looked at because for everything that we talk about Patrick Mahomes and all the winning that they've done, he's done a piss-poor job of equipping this team as players got older and as players moved on or they traded them to replenishing the stock. Outside of Rashee Rice, where are the offensive weapons? There is no running game, which is probably their biggest issue on offense. The offensive line, they haven't. I mean, we can hold off on Josh Simmons, but as far as the actual weapons, I mean, Xavier Worthy just got here. I don't know, but Rashee Rice we know is a guy when he's not in trouble. But I think the lack of draft depth and the lack of free agencies as well, and the lack of going after a running back, and specifically one that can catch out of the backfield, a la Alvin Kamara, who was a guy I thought they might try and trade for at the trade deadline. The lack of that is really a big Achilles heel to this whole team. And Patrick Mahomes, also him, propensity for throwing those big interceptions. On the other side, I really have to show a lot of respect to the Broncos defense. They are legit. They are for real. They made all the plays. Bo Nix, some key throws down the stretch in that fourth quarter to put them in position to get that game-winning field goal. But that Broncos defense is legit, and if they could get the run game going, have run game defense and run game travel very well in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to your point about this Chiefs roster, it's a good roster, but there's definitely some holes, and they've kind of had to do a patchwork job, bringing in a Hollywood Brown and bringing in these guys to kind of put together some weapons around Patrick Mahomes. But you're right. Mahomes isn't playing at the same level we've expected from him, and especially in big situations where this guy is one of the most clutch quarterbacks we've ever seen. But he's made some huge mistakes late in big games this year. And you mentioned it, that killer red zone pick. And he actually threw a pick six in this game that got called back because of a penalty that I think was a pretty iffy penalty to begin with. But that could have been a back-breaking play as well on another throw that was really just a bad throw from him, just not making the same big plays in these games. KC just isn't winning these close games like they did last year. I mean, last year it seemed like the ball bounced their way so many times in these close games. And I said it last year, I said it going into this year, that eventually that type of luck runs out. They were 12-0 in one-score games last year. They're 0-5 in one-score games this year. So it is a little bit shocking. And I'm with you. I'm not ready to bury this team yet. They've got some winnable games on the schedule. They've got the Raiders, the Titans. They've got some teams that they should be heavy favorites against. They do have a couple tough games coming up. That Colts game is going to be huge, especially after this loss. They're going to really need to bounce back in that game. But I'm not ready to bury them yet, because if they sneak into the playoffs, it looks like now most likely a wild card spot. But if they sneak in, they're going to be dangerous because we know how clutch they are. But this certainly is a team that's taken a step back from what we've seen in the last couple of years. Shift gears here. Bucs and Bills. Man, this was a fun matchup. Alex, this is a game where I think we really saw the best and the worst of the Bills in one game. The best of the Bills, as we know, is Josh Allen. The best dual threat quarterback I think this league has ever seen. I mean, the guy who's playing at an MVP level right now can put the cape on, carry the Bills in games like this, and take over games with his playmaking ability. But then the worst of the Bills is a team that gives up 200 yards rushing and 32 points. And we've been harping on this the last few weeks and for a while now. This Bills defense just isn't good enough for them to be a legit championship contender. And I think it comes back to, once again, I think it comes back to Sean McDermott in this staff. They've got to find a way to get more out of that side of the ball. You can't expect Allen to carry this team every single week. And he had to in this one because the Bucs offense, they put up 32 points. They did their job. But that's a defense that just doesn't scare anyone, and they give up way too many big plays.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before, the level of injuries that they're facing on the offensive side of the ball for Tampa Bay, but yet and still, Baker Mayfield, he had a very pedestrian game. He did throw an interception, but still was able to keep them in the game with some of the plays that he was making. Sean Tucker, the third string running back, comes in and has 100 yards and 2 TDs, on with another rushing touchdown from Baker Mayfield. But I just think that obviously a lot of their big play guys, I mentioned Bucky Irvin, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Obviously Emeka Buka is still out there perhaps leading for Rookie of the Year. But if you saw Tet's game this week, he has something to say about that. But on the other side, Josh Allen, who's my player of the week with a total of 6 touchdowns. He did throw 2 interceptions, but he had 3 passing, 3 rushing. But you're completely right. This is a defensive coach in Todd Bowles who's been doing a great job this season. Let's be fair. I'll be saying he's been doing a great job this season. With the new OC, Baker's turnovers are down tenfold because he led the league with 19 interceptions last year. But however, defense is his side of the ball. If your guy with all those injuries, which I mentioned on purpose, are sitting out and away up in Buffalo, up in the cold, and they put up 32 points, it is your job as a defense to at least have the other team score 31, especially when you were applying a lot of pressure during that first half and you let them come back and score 23 points to your 12 in the second half. You have to be in a position to help out the offense.
I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but I saw the press conference where Todd Bowles mentioned something along the lines of, when you put up 32 points, you expect to win. And he's absolutely right. And the Bucs now have lost 3 of their last 4 after a 5-1 start. So this team's starting to spiral a little bit. And I think the special teams are a real issue that nobody's really talking about. They gave up 240 return yards in this game. When your defense is having trouble and your special teams are having trouble, that puts a ton of pressure on your offense. And I'm with you. The game ball, I'm going with Josh Allen too, Alex. So this is a kind of a no-brainer. This is a historic performance. Like you said, 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns, 347 total yards. He's now only the second player in NFL history with multiple 3 rushing and 3 touchdown passing games. The last guy to do that was Otto Graham. Pretty crazy stuff from what we're seeing from him. Let's shift here. Go ahead.
Yeah, really quick, and I just want to say this. You talk about their spiral, but don't look now. Here come the Carolina Panthers, who are a game out of first place. And lo and behold, Carolina and Tampa Bay play each other twice, 2 of the last 3 games of each of their season.
Yeah, Carolina is a scrappy football team, and they're starting to really find ways to win. I was pretty impressed with them this weekend, and I was really impressed with Bryce Young. That might be the best game I've seen from him in his NFL career. I mean, that was a gritty performance. It looked like he was going to leave the game with the injury. He toughs it out and put up a really monster game and gets a big division win.
You know what? And just because we both pick, I'm going to switch mine to Bryce Young. 448 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, if you saw, everybody saw the game, it was Tech that was going crazy. Even Xavier Legette decided to show up for this game. Just for the sake of us choosing both Josh Allen, Bryce Young deserves a look here. 440 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was absolutely awesome. No doubt about it. And Teteroa McMillan, man, that kid's a player for sure. He's a guy that I think is certainly in the Rookie of the Year conversation as well. Let's go out west. We had a fist fight in the NFC West, Rams, Seahawks. Look, to me, this is looking like 2 of the best teams in the NFL, not just the NFC, but 2 of the best teams in this league right now, 2 of the best defenses in the league right now, and it absolutely played like that. Neither team could really get it going offensively. The one thing that stood out to me, Alex, is I thought the Rams matched the physicality of the Seahawks, because that was the big question for me coming into this game. Could they play to that level of the physicality of the Seahawks team and Mike McDonald in the kind of the culture he's built there? They ran the ball better and had really better balance than the Seahawks. And I think this win really shows how complete of a football team they are, being able to win ugly with defense and special teams. When you think Rams, you think Sean McVay, you think Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, you think about this offense. But this is a complete football team that just showed me a lot in this win.
Yeah, and listen, this game was 19-21. Sam Darnold threw 4 interceptions. 4. And the score was still 19-21 against a Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, who's having an MVP-like season. That tells me that, Seattle's locked in, and they're going to be scrappy whether they can make it and go on a run. I think a lot of that depends on if Sam Darnold, doesn't start to see ghost again. However, 4 interceptions and you still lost this game only by 2 points. That means your team as a whole was still locked in, and Mike McDonald had coached them up to stay within the game with all the turnovers, because it's easy to get frustrated there. I'll go really quickly to the Rams side. Devontae Adams still has the best feet in the business. That 1-yard touchdown, even though it's the only catch that he had, was pure, was beautiful. It looked like a ballerina out there. It was a bang-bang pass from Stafford. He was going there. There was no time to look anyplace else. Great play. The defense of the Rams locked in. They applied pressure. They were all over the place. A couple of throws, Sam Darnold, he missed Rashid Shaheed. Maybe that takes some time to get used to that speed. He underthrew him, and Emmanuel Forbes was able to get his hand on the ball and knock it away. But again, the Los Angeles Rams look like a real team. And like you said, Brett, I'll say like what you said, like a boxing match. Styles make fights. People think of them as a dome team, as a finesse team. No, they got in the phone booth and fought with Seattle, and Seattle wanted to make this a fight, and the Rams decided to say, well, we'll step in the ring and we'll brawl. We don't have to be Floyd Mayweather. We could be Joe Louis out here if we feel like it.
Yeah, I love the analogy, man, and I'm with you. And the thing is, like, I love the Sam Darnold story. Don't get me wrong. I love what we've seen from him. The redemption story of him and his comeback has been awesome to watch. But unfortunately, these games keep happening for Sam Darnold in big spots. And I think it's a real question mark for Seattle going forward. And I think it's a big reason why the Vikings, even though they wanted to bring him back, I think there was some hesitation to pay him big money when, let's face it, in some of the biggest games last year with the Vikings, he folded. And in this game, in a big moment, he folded. So it's tough to kind of wrap your head around that, because everything about the Seattle team looks like they could be a contender when he's playing his A game. But man, those picks were brutal. And those were, a lot of those picks were just bad decision, ugly interceptions. You mentioned the Jets, the Carolina days, seeing ghosts. It kind of looked like old Sam Darnold at points in this game. And I don't want to take anything away from that Rams defense, because they were lights out. but he made some really poor decisions with the football in this game. And Sam Darnold is now 0-3 versus the Rams the last 2 years. So this is a little bit of a disturbing trend if you're a Seahawks fan. All right, let's shift to the NFC North. We had a big-time game, Bears, Vikings. Caleb Williams' 5th game-winning drive this season. He didn't have a great game. The offense really struggled. They couldn't run the ball. But once again, he made some big plays late in this game. Special teams had some big plays in this game. And, man, I don't know how else to put it. J.J. McCarthy was just awful in this game. 2 really bad picks where he put the ball in harm's way with some terrible decisions. He also had multiple times in this game where there was open receivers and he just isn't seeing the field. And late in the game, he made a couple big throws. It's crazy because we've seen this from JJ a few times now where he just looks awful for the majority of the game, but in big moments, he does seem to come through. He did in this game, and he gave Minnesota a chance to win this game, hit a couple big throws to take the lead with 50 seconds left. But like I said, I got to give the Bears a lot of credit here because they keep finding ways to win these games. They keep finding ways to kind of grind out these wins and make plays late. And I think it says a lot about this young quarterback and this coach.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say, I know people are going to say Caleb Williams this, Caleb Williams that. The one thing I'm going to consistently give Caleb Williams a lot of credit for is he doesn't turn the ball over. And that's a real big thing when you're a young quarterback, you're coming in, you think you can fit things in the windows that you could in college that are not typically there in the NFL. He's not turning the ball over, which is why I think they're being, if you want to call them scrappy or being able to maintain consistently staying in games, he's not turning the ball over. That's point number one. The other side of the ball, J.J. McCarthy is doing the complete opposite. He's turning the ball over. This was something that, as looking at him, looking at his film coming out of Michigan, he was never relied on to win a lot of those games. It was run the ball and play defense. Now, they did add Jordan Mason as another component to the running game along with Aaron Jones. Obviously, he has an elite receiver. Well, I was as a core when you add Justin Jefferson and you Jordan Addison, who's still young but coming on. T.J. Hockenson, who seems like the injuries may have affected him a little bit more than what we may have thought. And then Jalen Nailor stepping in and being that slot guy and that third receiver. There's too many weapons between the running game and the receiving core, as well as a solid offensive line, that it doesn't seem that a lot of these mistakes need to be made. It's just because he's got to figure out, hey, there's a little bit more on your shoulders here as opposed to what it was at Michigan, that you're going to have to take on and be more careful with the football in order for us to win games, because they've been competitive. And, for the most part, obviously J.J. McCarthy's been hurt, but J.J. McCarthy, this is technically his rookie year. So he's going to have to learn to cut down on a lot of those mistakes, because those windows and the running game that you may have had in Michigan and defense you had in Michigan is not what you have in the NFL. You're going to have to learn to take care of the ball a lot more.
All right, let's move on to the Sunday night football game, Eagles-Lions. Look, I think the Eagles are still the toughest team in the NFL, and they showed it again. This team is moving in the right direction. They still are a team that dominates in the trenches. They do just enough on offense to grind out these types of wins. I said it last week on the show, and it showed up again in this game. Jalen Phillips was a huge addition at the trade deadline for Philly. He was a problem in this game for the Lions. And this Lions team, we talked about it in the offseason. I think we both expected them to take a little bit of a step back this year, losing both coordinators, losing some key pieces on the offensive line. I think I predicted them for about 10 wins. They're still a good football team, don't get me wrong. But I can't help but wonder, Alex, if their Super Bowl window has already closed. And I know Lions fans do not want to hear that, but that offensive line has lost some guys, like I said. It's still really good, but it's just not what it was a couple years ago. And I don't think they're in the class clearly of a team like Philly, the Rams, possibly the Seahawks, some of these other top NFC teams. I'm not sure they're still in that group. They might be just a tier below that group. And it kind of makes me wonder if they still are the legit contender that they have been the last couple of years. So this is going to be a big stretch run for them to see if they can kind of get it going again. And it's going to be a really big offseason for them to kind of try to fill in some of those holes and continue to build this thing back up, because these are two teams, two teams that kind of have a similar DNA. These are teams that want to play tough, win in the trenches, run the ball. But Philly was the bigger bully in this game, and I think that showed out in this one.
Yeah, when you say bully, we could just talk about the two bullies up front in Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter combined had 5 pass deflections. That's more than what Cooper DeJean, Quentin Mitchell, Shepard, and Makuba, they had 5. The defensive backfield had 4. And it looked like Jared Goff was Doug Flutie back there because the passes were just getting batted down the lines. Now, to me, this is a microcosm of what we would say about any dome team. This was probably the first weekend of a lot of cold weather, specifically on the East Coast, where you got a lot of cold weather. So now they're outside. They can't, their fast track isn't there, even though they had a nice big touchdown pass to Jamison Williams. But that fast track wasn't there. Jared Goff, they had that rush up the middle. He is a statue in the pocket, and the rush coming up the middle from Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter was getting him off his spot. Now, I will say one thing about Jared Goff. They went for it on 4th down. There was a play. Brock Wright crossed right in front of his face, and instead of throwing the Brock Wright coming across the middle at a 5-yard lead on his guy, he threw to the back of the end zone, I believe, to Amon-Ra, who it was a tough pass because he was covered thoroughly, whereas opposed Brock Wright was really right there in his view and threw the ball. But the reason they lost is because Dan Campbell, who has taken over play calling, he coaches football the way I play Madden. They were 0 for 5 on 4th down. They literally left, I believe, 6. I want to say it was 6. They either left 6 to 9 points on the field. Not to mention that terrible going for it when they tried to punt and go for it on 4th and 2. There's a certain way when there's a game flow and you see that points are going to be at a premium. You then, even though that may be something that you do, every time is not to go for it on 4th down. Sometimes you punt and play field position. Sometimes you take the points. And this was a simple coaching thing where you didn't realize the flow of the game and that points were going to be at a premium. This wasn't going to be 30-31. This game was 16-9. You needed to take all the points that you could get and play defense. And I understand that people like his rah-rah mentality, but sometimes in these critical situations, this is where the coaches can lose the game for the players. 27-20 over the Giants after firing their coach. Jackson Dart being hurt, Scatterbo was out. Jameis Winston as the starter. Listen, the Jameis Winston experience is probably the greatest experience in football history, from his before game speech, to the press antics, to the before game speech, to everything that happens, the highs and lows in the game, to what he has to say after the game. But this game should not have been 27-20. They should have not struggled with the Giants as much as they struggled with the Giants. This was another East Coast game. It shouldn't have mattered. You're Green Bay. You play in Wisconsin. This type of weather should have felt home for you. So I don't know what's going on there, Brad. We have to really try to figure out who are the real Packers before we get to the playoffs.
I think they've been the toughest team to figure out all season. I'm with you, Alex, because when they're clicking, it looks like a team that could win a Super Bowl. But the offense has been way too hit or miss. I think the running game has been way too hit or miss. I think they need to find some consistency in the run game and take some of the pressure off Jordan Love, because he's been really inconsistent. I think when the run game is going, the offense kind of flows through the run game and it makes life easier for him. The defense is still playing some pretty good football. That might be the one side of the ball that I feel the most confident about, is what Jeff Hafley and that defense is doing, what Micah Parsons has added to them. That's a defensive unit that can get after teams. But the offense has just been so hot and cold all year. You don't know what Packers team is going to show up. So I'm with you. I can't quite figure them out. And if we're kind of getting into that stretch run here where they need to kind of iron this thing out going into the playoffs if they're going to be a team that's going to make some noise. So I'm with you on the Packers completely. I can't figure this team out.
Yeah, and lastly, we have to talk about the Cleveland Browns. I'll start with, I don't know what Myles Garrett is getting up and eating in the morning, but this is a bad man. 9 sacks in the last two games. I don't think I've seen anything like that. I guess I would have to go back to maybe the 7 sacks I saw from Derek Thomas with the Chiefs in that stretch where he was just going crazy in one game. I haven't seen anything like this in a very long time. And another thing, and shout out to our team, the team, for bringing it up. One of the things that Dave said to me, he said, we have to really take a look at this guy. Was the fastest to 100, I believe it was 100 sacks in under the age of 30. We have to start to take a look at, if Myles Garrett, barring any type of catastrophic injury, can he stay healthy enough to get to 200? I think that'd be a great off-season topic. I'll pin that. I say things to Brad during the so he could write it down and then we can go over it during the summer. But finally, for all of you all clamoring, you finally got the Shedeur Sanders experience. He didn't start. He came in for injured Dylan Gabriel after the half. I mean, obviously it was tied and they were trying to win the game. Stakes were high. He was 4 for 16, 47 yards and an interception. What I will say, the first they got it out of the system. The first completion, I think it was a quick twitch to a quick 2 or 3 yard out to Cedric Tillman to get that out of the system. He had a nice pass to
NFL fans, what's your favorite touchdown? For me, it's the next one. Because with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, every touchdown could bring you closer to cashing in. From first touchdown scorer to anytime touchdown props or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. I'm checking out the Minnesota Vikings at Detroit Lions game over on DraftKings Sportsbook. The Lions are currently favored by 8.5 points, and the total is set at 47.5. Lines and odds subject to change, but that one definitely caught my eye. Here's the best part. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Your team hitting pay dirt pays out to you. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PINTGLASS. That's code PINTGLASS for new customers to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. Pass-through of per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
And he had a nice rollout where I thought he was going to be able to get a touchdown, but he overthrew the guy. But other than that, there was just a lot of bad plays, on a terrible interception. A couple of good reads. I will always say, when you get a young quarterback, the jitters may be up, the nerves may be up, but are they making the right reads? I saw a few right reads in there, just bad passes, but that interception was terrible. And then he started to do what I always said he did in college. He started to trend, falling back and thinking he's more athletic than what he really is and taking big sacks. He had 2 sacks for 27 yards, and that's because he was trying to outrun the defense as opposed to just falling down, taking a sack, and living to fight another day. He lost 27 yards on two bad sacks, trying to do things that he just physically isn't capable to. But I'll say this, I don't wish injury on anybody, but if the Dylan Gabriel injury is severe enough, perhaps Shedeur will get a full week of practice, and then you can see what he can do with a full week with the ones and then go into a game. Next week, they have us, meaning the Raiders, so that'd be a perfect game for him to start and perhaps be able to see what he can do against our defense.
Yeah, I'm with you. First, Myles Garrett, unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable what he's doing. It's just sad that this guy is going to spend the majority of his career becoming one of the greatest defensive players we've ever seen, easily one of the best defensive players in this generation, and playing on a franchise that is never really going to be in a position where he's going to be on a big platform in the playoffs, making deep playoff runs on a big stage. It's just, he's putting up most of these stats for teams that are below 500 and don't matter in the thick of things. And it's really unfortunate to kind of see his talent get wasted in a terrible franchise like Cleveland. But real quick with the Shedeur Sanders, I've seen this guy just getting killed on Twitter and every other social media platform. Everyone is so quick to just bury this guy, and I don't think it's fair. Did he play great? Absolutely not. Did he have some really bad plays in this game? To your point, Alex, the bad pick, took some bad sacks. Absolutely. Were the numbers great? No. He did make a couple nice throws in this game, but I'm with you because people have to realize how difficult it is for any quarterback, especially a rookie, but any quarterback that's coming in as a backup mid-game. That is one of the toughest situations for any player at the quarterback position, because these guys, when you're a backup, you're getting very, very few snaps at practice. You're getting very few reps. And so to come in cold in the middle of a football game in the NFL as a quarterback is a very difficult thing to do as a backup. And I think it's going to be a way more indicative sample size to kind of see him, like you said, if he gets a chance to be announced as starter this week, to see what he does when he actually gets some reps. He's part of the game plan and is practicing with the ones. That's a much better indicator to kind of see what he can do going into a game, knowing he's a starter versus being tossed into the action like that. So it's a difficult spot for any quarterback, but especially a rookie. So I don't want to beat up on the kid. I don't think this means anything. I think it's an extremely small sample size. I'm with you. I'm not wishing that Dillon Gabriel missed his time, but for the Browns' sake, it might be the perfect opportunity to get a look now at your other rookie, because they've got some big decisions to make this offseason at the quarterback position. So I think it's important that they get these looks at both these quarterbacks to kind of see, okay, where do they stand with them going forward? Let's shift to college football, Alex. We had some big-time top 25 matchups. We had some games that had some major college football playoff implications. I want to start in the SEC with Oklahoma, Alabama. This is a big win. I liked Alabama in this spot. This is a team that was rolling. I thought this was a team that was looking like they were kind of finding their stride at the perfect time. And Oklahoma came in, made some huge stops in this game, forced 3 turnovers, including that pick 6 against Ty Simpson. I think this OU defense is for real. I think that's the one side of the ball that I've trusted all year long. And it's kind of crazy because if John Mateer could stay healthy this season, if we look back to what he looked like early in the year, he just hasn't looked quite the same since the injury, and it's understandable. But if that injury doesn't happen, how good is Oklahoma right now? Are they in the driver's seat instead of a team that's kind of fighting and clawing to get into this college football playoff? Because this team looks really tough right now. This defense came out through so many looks at Ty Simpson, had him hesitant, had him confused. And this was really the first time since that Florida State game in week 1 where he just looked rattled in this game.
Not only, how would Oklahoma look, how would John Mateer look? Cam Ward went to where, Brad? Washington State, transferred, became the first pick. John Mateer, in the year where all the top quarterbacks that people were looking at fell, John Mateer could have been in a position to be right behind Cam Ward and be another number 1 pick himself, looking at him as an individual, obviously looking at him in terms of the Oklahoma Sooners as a whole. Yeah, we could be talking about a team that could possibly go on a playoff run, but I think the injury is going to rear its head as they get into the playoffs and things happen. Now, on the Alabama side, this wasn't a bad loss. It's a loss, but because we're talking about college, because we're talking about the playoffs, this is not going to kick them out of contention. Now, they have to be careful going forward. They need to make sure that they take care of business going forward, but this isn't a bad loss. This isn't going to knock them out of the top 12, but they'll be able to maintain. But they're going to need to be paying attention to what's coming ahead and make sure they take care of business going forward. Oklahoma's defense looks for real, but to your point, I think, and like similar to what we said about Nussmeier after we found out about that oblique injury, I believe that he had, there's something still wrong here. He's not able to get the velocity behind the ball that like I was accustomed to seeing. I think he's grinning and bearing it for the most part and toughing it out for the team. So at some point, as you go through the rest of the season and then the playoffs, you're going to face better defenses that are going to need that. They're going to force you to do things that you just physically may not be able to do.
Before this game, I thought Alabama might be a legit title contender. I don't know. I know it's just one loss. I know Oklahoma's a good team, but it's got me thinking maybe they're not in that first tier. Maybe they're not a legit contender. Is that fair or no?
I think it's fair, and I think, you know what it is, Brad? I think there was so much noise coming into this season about Caleb DeBoer and this, that, and the third, because you're getting a new quarterback, and he's been there for a while. I think he was a top 6 or 7 QB in his class. Saban never got him on the field, but he gets on the field, there's no expectation, and then they start winning. And then they beat Georgia. Now, what was low expectation has now overreached expectation. And now when they lose a game that if we kept them what we thought, we probably could have seen this coming. And now it's like, are they just that? And that's what I think happened here. I think they are exactly who they should be. And the team is still growing. Now, they could possibly lose Ty Simpson, but going forward, they're building on something. Let's just say Ty Simpson stays, they're building on something. They're going to get some recruits if Caleb DeBoer knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I think big picture, they're just fine. Don't get me wrong. I think Caleb DeBoer is the right guy. And I know a lot of people in the South didn't think he was the right guy. There was a lot of people that were already calling for his job. I was saying even last year when they lost some games that they probably shouldn't have lost and missed the college football playoff, and then they lose the game against Florida State week 1, and I think everybody was off the Caleb DeBoer bandwagon. But he has totally righted the ship here. They've had a really nice season, and they still are in position to make the college football playoff. Because like you said, this isn't a damaging enough loss to kick them out of that conversation. I think they are absolutely still in the mix. I just don't know if they're in the national title conversation. And a couple of weeks ago, they were looking like a team that maybe could run all the way to the title. I just don't know if they are. I still question if they have a good enough running game. The defense is good, not great. In the passing game, we kind of saw when they play a great defense, you can rattle this passing game. So maybe they're not quite to that tier. So I have question marks as far as if they're in the elite class of college football, but still a team that's going to be fun to watch down the stretch. There's another big SEC game I wanted to get to, Alex. Texas, Georgia. First off, Texas has been way overrated in the polls, and I've been saying that for a while now. They've been a shaky team to be as highly ranked as they were. I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're a good team, but there's been a lot of talk about them, even with this loss, still being in the college football playoff conversation, which I think is crazy. I don't understand how that could even be a possibility with 3 losses and some of the close wins that they've had to squeak by some bottom feeders in the SEC. They just don't look like a playoff team to me. And I think Georgia kind of exposed them in this game. But I don't want to take anything away from Georgia because this is a team that seems to be peaking at the right time. This Bulldogs defense seems to be getting better every week. And this is a defense that has been a question mark for me because this is a team, they don't have the high-end NFL talent on the defensive side that they've had in recent years, but pretty impressive showing against a good Texas team. You know, they held Texas to only 23 yards rushing in this game. And I've got to give some credit to Kirby Smart because I think from a coaching standpoint, this might have been one of the most impressive coaching jobs I've seen from him all season. He decides to go for it on 4th and 1 from Georgia's 36 in a 1-score game late in the third. Man, that took some onions. And to make that decision and then convert it, then go for it again on 4th and 5 from midfield. Just a few plays later, they go up 21-10 and start to pull away. And then after that, on the ensuing kickoff, they catch Texas off guard with that surprise onside kick, and they recover it and go on and score. And that was the knockout punch. That series of events led to them pulling away from Texas and getting this big win. And I just got to applaud Kirby Smart because, look, if that backfires, he's getting a lot of critics right now. But look, it panned out, and he made all the right decisions late in that game.
Okay, I had to take a deep breath here. And I'm going to reiterate what I've been saying since last year. Sark blew this last year by not letting Arch Manning go through his troubles last year. So when he came into this year, he would be ready to go and put a lot of this team on his back. And there's too much on the young kid right now. Now, the other part is Sark already 1 foot out the door, which now will put Texas into the fray of people looking for head coaches and probably set up for probably the wildest coaching or college coaching offseason that we've perhaps ever seen. Is that what's happening here? Because this team was not prepared. Let's be clear. They were coming off of a bye. This wasn't them coming off of playing maybe Ole Miss or had another tough game. No, this is Texas. This is how they looked coming off a bye, preparing for a team that they knew they had to beat or wanted to beat to stay in contention. And they showed up 35-10. That's all you need to know about where this team is because they played as hard as their coach prepared them, and they didn't look prepared. So I'm going to ask again, is Stark 1 foot out the door?
Yeah, right now it looks like he's more interested in coaching Cam Ward than he is Arch Manning. So I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. We heard those rumors weeks ago. He didn't come out and say that he wasn't looking. He just said that he was upset that those rumors basically got out. And I said it then that there's something very telling about the fact that he didn't just squash those rumors right then on the spot, and he left the door open for speculation. So, yeah, I think it's very telling, and you're right. It kind of makes you wonder how prepared was this team going into this game because they were fighting for their playoff lives. They had to win this game to stay in the playoff hunt. And I don't care what Kirk Herbstreit or anybody else says. A 3-loss Texas team is not getting in the playoff. I just cannot imagine that happening. So I think there is something to be said about that, Alex. You're right. Next season, and you're right, if that Texas job opens up, my goodness, with all the jobs that would be open, some premier jobs in college football, it would be absolutely crazy if they threw their hat in the ring. I want to shift to Texas A&M real quick because they had a game that I think a lot of people were kind of overlooking going into this game. Big favorites against South Carolina. This is a bad 3-win South Carolina team they go up against. You know, Texas A&M undefeated, number 3 in the country, top-ranked team in the SEC, and they come into this game and look terrible. And look, this is a team, because I have to question at this point if Texas A&M is actually for real. And I don't want to discredit what they've done. I think Mike Elko has done an amazing job with this program. I think they're a very good football team, but I don't know if they're as good as that ranking. I don't know if they're as good as that record. They have that big win over Notre Dame early in the year, and they're 10-0. So I get it, and they play in the SEC, but they've played 7 of the bottom 8 teams in the SEC. They've had a very, very favorable schedule. They've managed to dodge all the big boys in the SEC. And on Saturday, they were down 30-3 at halftime. Like I said, to a bad 3-win South Carolina team, and they were at home, no less, Alex. Marcel Reed, first half, goes 6 for 19, 2 terrible interceptions, and then somehow, and I'll give them credit for this, and this is why I wonder, if they are for real, because I do have to give them credit. They put themselves in this huge hole, but Reed in the offense completely flipped the script. He throws 3 touchdowns in the second half, finishes with 439 yards, and they come back to win this game being down 27 points, one of the biggest comebacks we've ever seen in college football, one of the biggest comebacks we've ever seen in the SEC, and they come back and win this game 31-30. Unbelievable comeback, but it has me questioning when you kind of look at the whole resume and you kind of zoom out a little bit. Are the Aggies for real?
Well, I'll say this. Really quick note on South Carolina. If Lenore Sellers wins this would have been a huge win for his draft and his draft stock because they were up 30, like you said, they were up 33 at halftime. It looked like A&M was in huge trouble. And I can imagine from a betting standpoint, the money came in heavy on A&M once they saw that first score in the third quarter to try and come back. I wonder what that line was. That a few pods ago, you talked about Texas A&M if they were ready. And I think what you just spoke to gave you your answer. This team I believe is a year away. I've always thought that. I said that to you at the time because Marcel Reed is coming back. I don't believe he should go pro. I believe he should come back. And if I guess there's no big time, Arch Manning wanting to cross over city lines and get to Texas A&M, you keep Marcel Reed and you have him as your quarterback next year when this team is a year more experienced because we see they're trending up now. This is a team that should probably be in top 3 ranked coming into next year if they return everybody and end the season the way that I think they're going to end the season. So I think the answer to your question is it's not about believing them. I don't think that they're ready. I think like you originally thought, you thought they were a year away.
I agree with everything you're saying there. And I hope he does come back because I love the improvement we've seen from him, especially as a passer this season compared to where he was last season. So his development has been awesome to watch. This team has been fun to watch. And I think he's in the perfect situation to continue that development and become a guy that the NFL really looks seriously at. But I keep hearing these rumors, and I don't know how true they are, but there's a lot of buzz about him going to Miami next year. And I'm not talking about the Dolphins in the draft. I'm talking about the Hurricanes. So this is really interesting because Miami is going to be in a position to probably go and get another transfer quarterback. Carson Beck will be gone. It opens up the door for them to go after a guy like Marcel Reed. I don't know how much validity there is to that. If I'm Marcel Reed, I'm staying put regardless of how this season plays out. Even if they go to the college football playoff and get bounced, whatever the scenario is, this is a guy that I think needs to come back to this program because they've got him moving in the right direction from a development standpoint, and this team as a program is heading in the right direction. So I think it would be a mistake to jump to Miami. And if you're Texas A&M, they've got some of the deepest pockets in all of college football. So there's no reason why if Miami or one of these other programs comes calling, you don't just write a bigger check to keep him. So I would be surprised if he moves, but there seems to be a lot of buzz about that right now. So that's going to be an interesting story this offseason to follow as well. Now, I wanted to get to one more big game here in the Big Ten. USC and Iowa. This was a measuring stick game in a lot of ways. And I say that because USC right now is changing the narrative about them being built to play Big Ten football. They played a tough, physical football team in Iowa, a team that is really good in the trenches, a team that's really good defensively. And then, of course, earlier this year, they played Michigan, which is your stereotypical big physical Big Ten team. And they got wins in both of these games. And they did it by being able to run the ball and win up front. This game was in the rain, which is kind of strange because it was in LA. Obviously, they don't get a whole lot of rain down there, but it was a rainy, kind of nasty game. They were down 2 scores at halftime and came back in this game. And like I said, it's because they won up front and they were the more physical, tougher team. And I think it says a lot about this program and where they're headed. And just on a side note here, how good is Mekhi Lemon? Man, this guy is a game changer, Alex. Wow, this guy's good. Wide receiver, I mean, you just can't cover this guy, and that's a really good secondary.
I think Lincoln Riley, unlike Brian Kelly, is changing the narrative in USC, like you said. He's getting his team starting to play well. They're ranked. They have a shot. They're trending in the right direction. Iowa, like you said, tough team, always have good offensive linemen, and apparently whatever tight end you draft out of there, he's going to hit. If you know, you know. I think Lincoln Riley's done a great job with USC because there was a lot of noise around him, similar to that was around Brian Kelly, guys that come from these successful programs, and now they go to these probably bigger programs in a sense, and there's a level of expectation that's been there. And for the most part, both of them have underachieved. Obviously, Brian Kelly's now gone, but a lot of people look at Lincoln Riley and believe that he has underachieved to a certain extent, but he's still out there coaching this team. Well, right now, currently at 17, we'll find out where they are ranked tomorrow. But right now, he has this team, like I said, with Texas A&M, they're trending up. So we get to see what's next for USC for next year. I think the level of expectation next year is going to be different than where it is, but he needs to maintain, again, not losing any more games, and maintain, hopefully sitting on, I guess if they're at 17, perhaps sitting on that bubble or on the inside of that bubble of going to the playoffs.
Yeah, they're absolutely in the conversation, and you're right, it is trending in the right direction. I think he made some crucial moves, changing the defensive coordinator, bringing in some new guys, and trying to change the culture from that side of the ball, trying to build more up front, trying to be a more physical Big Ten style of team. And they have slowly morphed into one, even though this is still a high-flying offense. Jaden Maiava has made huge strides as a quarterback. He's having a great year. Like I mentioned, Mekhi Lemon and some of these receivers, they're an explosive offense like you would expect to see from a Lincoln Riley team. But they have shown that they can win in these tough, nasty football games, and I think that really bodes well for the trajectory of this program. They have the number 1 recruiting class in the country right now, so they're going to have an infusion of young talent coming in. So all things are looking good for USC, but this win sets up a huge game next week at Oregon, Autzen Stadium. Game day is going to be there. It's going to be crazy. That's going to be a loud, unbelievable environment. If USC wins that game against Oregon, they are absolutely right in the middle of the college football playoff conversation. So that is going to be a huge game on the West Coast. Speaking of Oregon, Alex, my helmet sticker this week is going to go to quarterback Dante Moore for the Ducks. Blowout win over a very solid Minnesota team. He went 27 for 30 with 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. 2 of his best wide receivers are out with injuries, and he was razor sharp in this game.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to I didn't mention my losses, but I will mention the win because TCU did not do their job over BYU. BYU won, but I did have Wisconsin 29.5 over Indiana. Take the points. It was 31-7. So if you took the 29.5, pat yourself on the back and drop a donation to PGF Nation. And my helmet sticker goes to, and this is against my Florida Gators, but it goes to Kawan Lacey, 31 carries, 224 yards, and 3 touchdowns, obviously the catalyst for that win against the Gators. You know, and I'll say this really quick. The Gators were in this game at halftime all the way until the fourth quarter, until the offense just didn't do anything for the rest of the game. This is, Brad, this is a good job if you want to move on from DJ Lagway, because I think he's done. But this is a good job because that's a young defense, and that defense is in place. I know, Penn State and other places, but this right here, to jump into this team with the defense the way that it is, the way that it's playing already after getting its coach fired, if you're telling me all you really need to do is bring in a quarterback, and I'm not saying that's easy to find, but if you can find yourself a quarterback, you can probably jump into this team and be in the playoffs in 1 year.
Yeah, first off, Lacey was awesome. And as good as Ole Miss has been, I have real questions about that team. I really do. Because, look, if you're a college football playoff team, it looks like they're going to be, if you're a team that aspires to win a national title, you can't keep messing around with teams like Florida. You certainly can't mess around with a team like Washington State, who I crushed them for a couple weeks ago. They've got to find ways to just put teams like this away. Now, I know Florida's got some talent, and I get that, but this is not a good football team. And if you're one of the quote-unquote top 10 teams in the country, you need to handle your business a game like this and not let them hang around late in this game, because there was a legit chance there where I thought Florida might pull the upset. You're right. So that's a little bit alarming for me if I'm looking at Ole Miss as a quote-unquote title contender. I don't think they are. I think they're a very good team. But like I mentioned a minute ago, some of these other teams, they might be in that next tier. Yeah, it's a big-time performance from Lacey. You're absolutely right about that. So I love the helmet sticker there. Oh, and then your last point about DJ Lagway. Really disappointing that we haven't seen more development from him. Former 5-star, a really coveted recruit for Florida. And look, he's still a young guy, but I think this was kind of the year that we thought he was going to take a big step forward, and it just hasn't really happened for him. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what the new coach does when they come in. Is he going to be a guy that they stick with and kind of rebuild around, or are they going to be thinking about putting their own fingerprints on the program and kind of changing things up? So it'll be an interesting offseason regardless for the Florida Gators for sure. But guys, if you enjoy the show, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow us on social media at PGF Podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. But once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.